Hello fellow RPG makers, Denias88 here. I was asked how I did the orb system in Quest of Verendia, as well as the New Game Plus system. So I thought, why don't I make a video of that, and show you, and tell you. So, let's begin. Orbs in Quest of Verendia is an accessory that contains a spell. The first orb you get is Fire Orb, so let's use that as the example. The orbs contains a cast version of the spell, available when it's equipped. The difference between the cast version of the spell and the regular one is that a cast version contains a common event. The common event is called Fire Orb Spell, and that common event will play every time the cast version of the spell is used. The only thing the common event contains is a variable. Every magic spell that can be learned by orbs has its own variable. When the cast spell is used, you get a random amount of magic study points, ranging from 1 to 10, as you can set here. The operation for the variable is add, not set, but add. Set will only put a specific number that's specified. Add keeps adding to it. Using it twice, for example, let's say you gain 9 points and then 6 points. It adds up to 15, and will keep adding to it until the required points are reached. This common event tracks all the level 1 spells. There are more common events like this one, tracking level 2 and 3 spells, and there are 2 more for special spells and advanced spells. But they all work the same, so let's take a look at level 1 spells. The common events that constantly tracks logic and whatnot has to be set to parallel process. That also requires a switch to be on to activate it. The switch I use turns on when Frago gets the Fire Orb from Ebula. To make it so the orb breaks, I use a conditional branch. These are very handy. I've set the required points for using Cast Fire at 100. And I set it here. This symbol means higher than or equal to. So if the points should go above 100, it still breaks the orbs as it should. When you lose the orb, the include equipment box must be checked, or else the orb being equipped won't break. I set the variable fire 1 study points to 0, so the points are reset. The scroll containing the regular spell is added and can now be used on character of choice. Pretty nifty. Took a while to do, but it was worth it. Let's add a fire orb in this chest just for the sake of showing it. There it is. Alright. I was also asked how I track the progress of the points earned when using a cast spell. In the 150 update for Quest of Verendia, I added a magic study book, which you can view the magic study points earned. Inside the magic book is a common event that plays when using it. You're greeted with the choices of what magic section you want to view, level 1, 2, 3 spells, support spells and advanced spells. Now, in the text box, there are codes written as well as text. Some of the codes changes the color of the text, and a few of them tracks the data of variables. There are 32 colors that you can use for text, 31 if you don't count white. You write the code with backslash, capital C, opening square bracket, number between 0 to 31, closing square bracket, and the text beyond that code will be the color the number represents. Use the color code again after a name, word or meaning, or however long you want to write. Using a 0 inside the brackets will turn the text beyond white. Now, to track the variable, you use the same code as colors, backslash, capital V instead of C, as V stands for variable. Opening bracket, the number of the variable you want to track, closing bracket. For this example, fire studded points is variable 101, so I write for this example 101. The code will turn into a number in game. That number is the current value of the variable of choice, and will change when something in your game sets a different value to it. In this case, adding points when using a cast spell.
The New Game Plus system. Oh boy, that's tedious to do on console, but possible. Of course, how tedious depends on what you want to carry over to New Game Plus in your game, should you wish to use the New Game Plus system. The easiest part of the New Game Plus is to reset the story. If you're like me, then variables are used to track the progress of your game, story events and such, or switches if you use that instead, or both. But the good thing about variables and switches is that you can set the value for multiple at once. You do that by selecting batch instead of a single variable or switch. I reset most of my variables except for a few. That's the merc level and merc points. I turn a variable called New Game Plus on when the game is completed. That variable lets the game know that it's a New Game Plus run. There are two parts that makes it tedious to do. One is that I don't want my gear, items and all to carry over. Since the next run takes the game to a higher difficulty, having all of the good stuff would defeat the purpose of a higher difficulty. Second is that every chest you open are still open, and you can't reset the chest by using a batch, since the chest uses a self-switch. Self-switches cannot be globally reset. Sure, you can use a variable instead, but wasting so many variables is unnecessary. And I would argue that most of us uses the quick command for chests anyway. So how did I do this? On console, I can't remove all items, weapons, armors and key items at once. So I had to manually remove 99 of every single item, every single weapon and every single armor to remove everything. The clear list of items, weapons and armor, I'm not quite sure what those are for. I was hoping that they would remove everything, but no, I wasn't that lucky. But after my removing everything one by one, I took a coffee break and some deep breaths for what's to come. First of all, the variable that I have turned on, or set to the value to 1, whatever value doesn't really matter. But that tells the game that you are playing the game again on New Game Plus. That's the variable that makes it possible to reset all the chests. Since you can't reset the self switches globally, I had to put on a new event on parallel process that plays only once on every map that contains a chest or an item for you to pick up. So, when you revisit the locations on the New Game Plus the first time again, that's when everything resets. It happens as you play, but in game you don't notice it. The event has 3 pages. The first one is empty, since on the new game, the New Game Plus is not active. The second page is what resets all the chests on the map at once using a switch I call Reset Chests. It plays for 1 second and turns the reset chest switch off again. It turns a new variable on that takes it to the third page, which is empty. If the third page of this event wouldn't exist, then the event would keep playing and constantly reset the chests, and that's not what we want here, is it? The chest has a third page as well. That's the same as the second, except it's on parallel process, and requires the reset chest switch to be on. The third page of the chest I turn the self switch off, and since the reset chest switch turns off as well after a second, the chest is now closed and ready to be rediscovered. The New Game Plus contains new chests that appears on the New Game Plus. They contain random loot, items, money, gear, and can really help you on the higher difficulties. I like making systems like this. Unlocking new modes and such when you complete a game feels rewarding and reminds me of the old days when the unlockable modes in the game were not DLCs to buy. As a PC user and RPG maker, it's easy to lean on plugins to do things for you. Of course, with plugins, you can do more things than the editor can do. So much more. However, I've been using plugins that adds a New Game Plus to your game. When I use the console version, I can't use plugins. Then I had to think and ask myself, what can I do without plugins? So whatever you might think of the console version of RPG Maker MV, it can teach you a lot. And I wanted to see if I could add a New Game Plus myself. And I did it. But then I thought, I should be able to do it on PC as well, without one. And that I can. So, there's one difference, a key difference that I wish the console version kept. And that's script calls. Script calls exist within the base RPG Maker MV. They're not the same as plugins, since script calls can only do what the editor is capable of. That means that script calls are not external assets. Since I was able to do this on console, I made the same New Game Plus system on Quest of Verendia Part 2 on PC. Here's what it looks like. You see these two? They're script calls. One of them resets all the self switches globally, and the other one removes everything from the inventory. All that tedious work I did on console was 2 script calls on PC. Here's the codes for those script calls. If you use the PC version as well, I thought these can help you out. With that said, I love the console version of MV very much. Even if I can't make my own music for it or make new assets, it still taught me and pushed me to be more creative. I now don't have to lean on plugins for everything. I use some plugins for things outside the boundaries of the editor. If I can do certain things without plugins, I can. Now that was my tutorial video. I hope that you enjoyed it and that you found value from it. I wish you all a great day and happy RPG making. Have a good one.